We left off on page Tes Vav, Ois Vav, the bottom of the page, line 22, 3 lines from the bottom. And we were speaking about the idea that there's B'tzalmeinu Kidmusenu, there's in our form and in our likeness, and we explained that the level of in our form is when we have the avodah shal pitam v'das, the avodah that is mugbal, that is limited, and that type of avodah is similar to what goes on in Bri Yitzira Asiyah, which is also a limited world. And we went on to explain at great length how even the malachim that are beyond time and place the way we are, they still relate to time and place, and we relate to spiritual time and place, and they relate even to physical time and place, and therefore our avodah can be considered to be in the same form, but salmeinu, like the avodah of above, because just like the form of a statue and a sculpture is in a similar type of measurements and so on, the same thing is above in the avodah. Now we're going to speak in regards to the worlds of Atzilus. When we talk about the world of Atzilus, over there it's not the relationship like a form, which is a closer, more similar type of relationship, but it's only a likeness, kid museinu, as we'll soon explain, that the avodah of shal l'mayla metam v'das that a yid has, the avodah bli gvul that a yid has, is only a likeness of above. That's what we're going to talk about right now. Ois Vav, line 22, page Tes Vav. Calls everything we spoke about now, about the avodah of B'tzalmeinu, ukefisha neshama mitzad oilmas bri yitzira v'asiyah. It's the way the neshama is from the perspective of the worlds of Bri Yitzira Asiyah in regards to those levels. So over there you could say B'tzalmeinu. These three worlds correspond to what the neshama went through. We say every morning in brachas that the neshama that you gave me it was created, you created her, you formed her, and you blew it into me, connected the world of Asiyah. So this is the level of the neshama that is Kitzalmein. Avol lifnei, but prior to this top of page Tezayin, yeshne inyan the neshama shenasata b'toirehi. There's the level of the neshama that you placed in me is pure. In other words, that's what it says before. Atabaros ati yitzart. It starts off with the words toirehi. Fisha oimekolach misrael, and the Rebbe emphasizes. I believe he said that also in the previous mimer, that this is not just certain neshamas, is the level of Tahiri. Every single Yid says this in the morning. That means that every single Yid is and has within him the level of the neshama that is Tahiri. That is the state and situation of the neshama, the way it is found, and does its service in the world of Atzilus. That the general idea of the avodah of neshama, the way it's in the world of Atzilus, who inyan abitl is the level of bitl. This corresponds to what the world of Atzilus is all about. That over there in the world of Atzilus, he, Hashem, the Ein Sof, and his life force, his vitality, the Oiris are one, and he and his bodies, meaning the vessels, are also one. Kabbalah, as the expression of Kabbalah is. Without going into in general, the world of Atzilus is called the world of unity and oneness with Hashem. That in the world of Atzilus there's only godliness. The entire idea of worlds as an entity other than Hashem, that begins in the world of Bria. How do you, what indicates, what is it, why does the world of Bria indicate that? He says, the word bara indicates something that was created, something from nothing. There's a classic thing that's always brought down, he says it here in the footnote as well, from the Ramban, that the Ramban says this, the Ramban explains in Chumash Bereshis that bara means yashmain. There's no other term in Lashon Kodesh for bringing something from a state of nothingness to a state of something rather than the word bara. That's the meaning of the word bara. It is the beginning of possibility for existence. Before the creation, there wasn't even a possibility for existence. The hiyuli, the potential, the possibility for existence begins with the creation, with the world of Bria. Baruch like to explain in a different place at length that this is the idea of Bria. Going back to what Atzilus is, that Atzilus is the world of Achdus, the world of Bittul. That means that that's an avoid that's beyond reason, beyond knowledge. It's a type of avoida. The avoida of Atzilus, as reflected in a person, in a neshama, is the avoida that's beyond the person's intellect and beyond the person's emotions. Shezoi close on the kudah. Being beyond one's intellect and emotions and understanding and so on, that is the point of the avodah known as accepting the yoke of heaven, and as well as the avodah of self-sacrifice. So the Rebbe in the parentheses explains, what if Kabbal's oil and Mesiras Nefesh is identical, so what's the difference in names? He says an interesting point. He says in the parentheses on line 15, V'hainu, Kabbalah's oil, kifishu b'dargat achtoina, the way it's reflected in the lower level, in the beginning, basic level. So we call it Kabbalah's oil. He doesn't know why, what, where. He hasn't yet come to a level of thinking. He just accepts the yoke of heaven. Or self-sacrifice. Self-sacrifice elevates a person way beyond. But both of them, their common shared point, the common denominator is that both of them reflect the idea of l'mayla metam v'das, the idea of the avodah of the world of Atzilus, the world of Bitla and Achdus. Such a type of avodah, the avodah of Kabbalah, so Mesiras Nefesh, places the person, sets the person in such a place, in such a state of being in our likeness. That in comparison to the true idea of being beyond measure and boundary, so our level of Kabbalah soil and our level of Mesiras Nefesh, as much as it's going out of the boundaries of intellect and emotions and etc., but still in all, it's only similar to, not like Tzalmeinu, which is the same form, the same measurements of the human body, but it's only a similarity, like we gave the mashal about the artist that can only make a facsimile, if you will, a similarity of someone that looks alive. They can't actually mimic life. So he goes on the second paragraph on page Tezayin, line 20. The idea behind this is, it's known, the examination, the exact language that it says about you shall love Hashem your God in all your heart and all your soul and all your might. So one of the explanations that the Chazal give in the word b'chol maidecha is they relate it to the word midah, measure, meaning sheb'chol midah midah shu moided lach. In every measure that he measures out to you, that is how you will serve him. So the Rebbe explains this idea of b'chol maidecha, this idea of b'chol midah is indicative of a level that's beyond measure and boundary. In the previous Maimer, we explained B'chol Ma'idcha, because Ma'id, as we speak about always in Chassidus, is the idea of Beligvul. But here he's going to explain, based on another explanation, the word B'chol Ma'idcha, the same idea. That since it's the idea of Ma'id, Midah, that you, in whatever measure he gives you, that's how you respond as well. Meaning, whether a person receives good from Hashem, or Chas v'Shalom, not that way, so he's still devoted in every midah, not measure for measure, but in every midah that he gives you, you are still devoted and you still love Hashem. That non-differentiation, that non-distinction, to be willing to have the same type of devotion to Hashem, regardless of how I am receiving things and how I'm getting things, that indicates an avoid that's beyond reason. Let's see inside, line 23, L'loi chiluk, that the person doesn't differentiate, regardless of how he's being treated. There has to be the idea that you should love Hashem your God equally, regardless of what happens to me, what occurs to me. Why does a person do it that way? How does a person bring themselves to such a state that they are loving Hashem equally, no matter how things turn out for me down here? Is because the avoid is beyond a reason and knowledge. Therefore, specifically on this avoida, Nemar, it says, that the level of the Avav B'chol Moedecha, where the person serves Hashem in a way that's beyond measure and boundary, as expressed by the fact that he is willing to love Hashem equally, regardless of what occurs to him. So that we're saying that he is considered making the will of the Creator, not just fulfilling, but making the will of the Creator. Top of Yud Zayin. Like it's known what the Mezritcher Magid explains. Yutas Kisov is also the yahrzeit of the Mezritcher Magid, in addition to being the Alter Rebbe's release from imprisonment. In the words of the Gemara, that the difference between the first parsha of Kriyat Shema and the second parsha of Kriyat Shema is that the first parsha of Kriyat Shema is talking about that the Yidden are oisen Ritzayin Shel Makim. In the simple sense is that they are doing what Hashem wants, and in the simple sense, Ein oisen Ritzayin Shel Makim, the second parsha of Kriyat Shema, are not doing what Hashem wants. But the Mezritcher Magid explains they are either making Hashem's will or not making Hashem's will. Let's see what this means. He says in line 4, Kivim Shabon Namarak B'chol Avavchem B'chol Nafshem. Only in Parsha, not only, but in Parsha Shniya Shel Krishma, the second Parsha, Vayim Shemoya, it only says with all your heart and all your soul. It doesn't say with all your might. Only the first part of Krishma, where it says and it's in such a way that we are making and creating the will of Hashem. Since it's avoided beyond reason and knowledge, like was mentioned previously. So therefore, because it's beyond reason, we have the power and capability to create Hashem's will, which in the Parsha Shniya, which we're not going beyond reason and knowledge, we do not create a new will. We have to make do with whatever is already in the system, etc., etc. Aval became, but still in all, so this is a very high level. So why is it called Kid Museinu? It's only in the likeness of above. It's not considered like B'tzalmeinu, which is a closer relationship. So he says, this is only your ma'od. What does that mean? The meditation that brought him to a state and situation that's beyond measure and boundary. So by a greater chacham, that he's in the expression of the Torah, it's called kli sichloi rechavim. He has a broad mind. A broad mind in Chassidus means he can tolerate and accept things. He doesn't get blown away easily. This, his bondness would not have brought him out of his boundaries. In other words, we're saying that the person is serving Hashem without boundaries and limitations. Why is he beyond boundaries and limitations? Because he's been blown away by something. He understood and realized about Hashem and his connection to Hashem that totally took him out of his limitations and boundaries. Because it took him totally out of his own limitations and boundaries, Therefore, he has this level of being serving the Eibishter with beyond reason and creating the will of Hashem, etc., etc. But this is only a result of his understanding of godliness. If someone else, wiser than him, of a broader mind than him, would have been mizboinen in the same topic that he did, he would have taken it. Okay. You can sometimes see this very often. People walk around, they say, you know what I just heard? So some people will say, yeah, wow, that's amazing. And other people will say, okay, so, fine, I can handle it. Some people are more broad-minded and in that regard. And this is what he's saying over here, that it's only ma'od shelcha. It's your ma'od. Because for someone else, it might not be going out of his boundaries. And if it's not going out of his boundaries, it's not a true infinite. And therefore, as he's going to explain, it doesn't really connect with the true infinite of above. So he goes on to explain line 14 of Lashon Ha'olam, Sha'adayin lo ha'yotzeh ma'kelim. There's a greater wise person that wouldn't gone out of it. The expression Yiddish, going from the kelim. He totally, it blew his mind. That idea is that for the greater chacham, this type of meditation, understanding, is in a way that he's measured and bounded. Therefore, it's only a similarity to the true idea of something being beyond measure and boundary. Since the meditation itself is limited, so therefore, it's only I that, according to my intellect and my emotions, I can't contain it until the I will leave my own boundaries, limitations, and I will stand in a movement of self-sacrifice. As opposed to someone that is wiser, his intellect, his mind can contain this understanding, this explanation, to remain in a way that's measured and bounded. Yet, those avoiders only in a way of comparison to above. In other words, it's only a likeness, it's not bitzalmeinu, it's only in a similarity. Since in comparison to his state and situation, this is an idea that's beyond measure and boundary. Through that comes down from above the true infinite, despite the fact that I'm not truly infinite, because what someone else is experiencing from me, similar to me, in my case, would have been limited. But still in all, we have the capability of bringing this down. So now, we're finally going to get back to the topic of Katointi Mikol Chsadim Mikol Emes. What does it mean Chsadim? What does it mean Emes? Why I say first Chsadim and then Emes? Any questions? Let's try to stick on topic because we still have a lot of Maimon to learn this week. Ois Zayin, bottom of page Zayin, line 27. The idea that we just now said, that Hashem will share with us beyond measure and boundary in a true manner, not a relative beyond measure and boundary, but the true idea of being beyond measure and boundary, Hashem will share with us, despite the fact that our going out of our boundaries are only relative to us. It's not truly going out of our boundaries. Zeu inyan kol achsadim. That's the idea that he said, that Yaakov Avinu said, I've become humbled by all your kindnesses. Like it's brought down Kabbalah Mamar Chassidus, what it says over here in this pasuk by Yaakov Avinu, all the kindnesses, what is it referring to? Top of page Ches. It is either referring to what it says, Rav Chesed, like it says in the Yud Gimel Sarachmim, the 13 attributes of mercy we say. So it says over there, Rav Chesed, and that Rav Chesed is not the ordinary Chesed of Atzilus, which is a limited chesed, but it's a chesed that's higher than Atzilus, either an Arach Ampin or even chesed of Atik Yomin of Primis HaKesed. Shazel L'maylam Didavagbo, that's beyond measure and boundary. And so, in other words, again, we are doing something that's only in our world considered beyond measure, but the Eibusher gives us something that's truly beyond measure. Katointi, because that's what it means. I become smaller from all the kindnesses. The koyal misha it's referring to someone that does his service in the service of davening. Kedis b'Gemara Shabbos, like it's brought down in Gemara Shabbos. Ukipirish Rashi, like Rashi explains, shitz iyun tefillah hainu b'chlal gemilos chasadim. The idea of going into depth in davening, examination in davening, that is part of gemilos chasadim that we're saying in the morning in all the things that the person eats the benefits in this world, and the principle remains for the world to come. And one of the things he says over there is even tefillah. So Rashi explains it's part of gemilos chasadim. Why is that so? What does doing the davening service have to do with gemilos chasadim? So the Rebbe explains the chesiv, like it says in the pasuk, goimel nafshe ish chassid. Who is considered a person of kindness? Someone who acts kind towards his soul. And therefore, a person when he's davening, he's benefiting, he's doing a kindness towards the soul, a person that does the avodah of davening. Since the person's avodah in davening is beyond all types of measure and boundaries, so by the inspiration down here below, that he davens in a way it's beyond measure and boundary, it comes down also that way from above. In the same measure that a person does, so too is measured out to him. He draws down and he awakens from all the kindnesses, which is specifically the chesed of Arach Ampin, which is the lower level of Keser, is an unlimited level of chesed. So that is now explained. The Rebbe finally explained what we began in the beginning of the Maimer to try to understand. What is this koilach sadim? Now, once we explained what is the idea of koilach sadim is the fact that we are receiving from a level beyond limitation, beyond boundary. And that is the first level that humbled Yaakov. Now we're going to explain how emes, the truth, is a higher level. Earlier we had the question that seemingly truth, that Hashem was faithful to his promises, is seemingly less humbling to us than just getting kindnesses that are beyond any type of commitment and promise and so on. But here the way we're explaining is that the kindnesses are referring to a chesed that's beyond measure and boundary. So by explaining what emes is, that's where he's going to get to the higher level. So he says in line 12, page Yud-Ches, but there's a higher idea. From what it says in the continuation of the pasuk, emes, from all the truth, the koyal Torah is referring to Torah. Shenikras b'shem emes, Torah is called truth. Shagam b'yoyselamata, even while the Torah is down here below in our world, ba'olam shekol inyanai hu inyan hashinuyim, in a world that the entire definition of this world is about changes. Ein b'makim, ve'en b'zman, the changes are both in place and also the changes are in time. So still in all, despite the fact that that is where Torah comes down to, it remains the way it is without change. Like it says in the pasuk, behold, my words are like fire. Just like fire is not susceptible to becoming impure, to becoming tamei, so too the words of Torah as well are not susceptible to tumah. And that's the reason why a person may study Torah despite the fact of having the most severe contact with tumah. He was in contact with the body of a deceased person or whatever it is. He may still learn Torah. This means as follows: even when the Torah is found down here below, it's studied by a person that's impure. In exchange, just like fire is not susceptible to impurity. Kacham divrei Torah, so to the words of Torah, Dvari, my words. Shenemar ma'idei Adam, that's said by a person, Shubamayim demas shleb chatara. That's in a state and situation that's the opposite of purity. It's in a way of fire, that they are not susceptible to impurity. Why is that so? Because Torah is emes, and emes, truth, is unchanging. That's because Torah is truth. Like it's brought down in Yerushalmi, that the word emes is made up of three letters. Aleph, Reisha, the alpha base. The Aleph of emes is the beginning of the Aleph base. Mem b'mtziisa, mem is the middle of the Aleph base. Kishemoinin gamas oisak fullest, top of page test. How and when does mem come out exactly in the middle? That's if you also count the double letters. In other words, you say kaf and chaf, beis and veis, etc. So when you count those letters, also there's letters that we're not familiar with that are fullest. There's gimel and jimel, Sephardi pronunciation. There's a daled with a dagish, daled without a dagish. Anyway, so there's 7 letters that are doubled, and when you count it with those double letters, only 4 of them are before the letter mem. So then mem will come out exactly in the middle. Taf b'soifan, the letter taf is completely at the end. Loimer, to say, Ani Avaya Rishon Cholu, I am Hashem the first, I am Hashem the last, and besides me, which means also in the middle, there's also no God. So in other words, it's all the same, unchanged, the same Ani at the beginning, the same Ani at the end, the same all through it. Without any changes, that's the idea of the godliness that is totally beyond any types of changes. Like it says, I am unchanged. From this comes down also in Torah, and through Torah, Torah, which is emes, now imparts that to the Yidden, that now the Yidden, through their avodah, can also draw down the emes of Hashem that is everlasting. That this should also permeate the world, just like Torah, which is truth, also comes down into the world. And that is what Yaakov Avinu was talking about. Katointi mikol chsadim mikol emes. The chsadim is talking about the level of the Hashem's chesed that's beyond measure and boundary. It's a result of our love that's beyond measure and boundary. And emes is that truth and unchanging aspect of Hashem that's brought down through Torah and the Yidden down here into this world. And tomorrow we're going to speak about how these are different grades and levels. First you have the level of chsadim, then you have the level of emes.